Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining us for today's community leadership meeting with our sheriff. We are very glad to have him on board. Just want to thank everybody for joining us. Especially want to thank Renaissance Bank for their sponsorship. They have been longtime great supporters of the chamber, longtime great supporters of discussions like this with community leaders, talking about the future of our community, where we're headed, leadership opportunities and leadership development opportunities. So Reticent and the team there, thank you so much for your continued investment, not just in the chamber, but in this community. You're a big part of our growth and our development as a county. So thank you very much. So I just want to start with a few basic ground rules before we get started. First of all, we have received just an incredible number of pre-submitted questions, much more so than we have probably, I think, in any other community leadership discussion. And so we will do our very best. The sheriff and I have talked about it. We're going to do our very best to get through as many of them as we possibly can. But we also want to make sure that we have a really rich conversation and don't just blow past some really important questions either. If you have questions, you'll find a Q&A feature. Most of you will have it at the bottom. Some of you may have it at the top, but a Q&A feature that the sheriff and I will be able to see those questions as they come up. So to get us started, though, I wanted to start with a question for all of you as participants and all of you as business owners and business folks in the community. And so I'm going to ask Jesse if she will post the poll question that we have. So which statement below best describes the importance of community safety to you and your business? A, it is the number one most important community priority. B, it's among the top 3 to 5 community priorities. Or C, it is not a community priority. And if you will, please submit your questions. See those coming in right now. Thank you. We're going to give it just a few more seconds for folks to be able to participate. And it looks like it's certainly up there. All right. We've held that out there for about 30 seconds. And it looks like, well, first of all, no one said it's not a community priority, which is phenomenal. But among the top 3 to 5 leads it at 72%. And the most important community priority at 28%. And I suspect, Sheriff, that that really reflects also the fact that community safety is something that we all accept as a given. We shouldn't, certainly shouldn't take it for granted. You and your team do a phenomenal job, and but I think it also speaks well that people are recognizing this is a safe community, and certainly from a business standpoint as well. So, Sheriff Freeman, rather than me doing an introduction for you, I'm going to ask you if you would introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, what brought you into law enforcement, and just tell us about yourself, if you would.
So this is the boring part of the presentation. Um, Guys, welcome and thank you. I told James that they said they had a lot of pre-registered attendees, and I said, well, I called all my friends and asked them to do it so somebody would show up, and they had 60 plus, and I said, well, I got 3, they got 57, so we did well. Look, I've been in this community. Most people think I grew up in this community, and I pretty much did, although I moved here in 6th grade. I'm originally from South Georgia, just outside of Statesboro, in a little farming community, but have lived here since elementary school. I married a homegrown girl whose family has been here since the 1830s, and went to the one high school, which is now Forsyth Central, that was here. Went to Georgia Southern and some other colleges, got my degrees and graduate degree, and I started with the sheriff's office in 1987. Left for 4 years, went to Brookhaven Police to be, when that city started up as a new city, to become their new deputy chief, and got a lot of opportunity to build something from the ground up there. So that was a lot of fun. I'm third generation. Most of my family has been, on my father's side, been in law enforcement, several of them for 40 plus years. This is my 33rd year. God, that hurt to say. in this profession. And I can tell you that I love it as much today as I did. This is my home. This is where I go to church. This is where my kids grew up. Both my kids, my youngest is a college senior on his last semester. But this is our home, where my parents live, where my mother-in-law lives, and so there's not a better place to be than Forsyth County, and this is where I want to be and serve. And I've had the great privilege to be your sheriff, and some of you gave me that opportunity to do that, and we're going to work hard at it every day. And James, to your point, I'm glad that we don't see crime or safety as being the number one issue, because then that says maybe we're not doing our job as well. And I understand why some people would say that, because they're rightfully concerned for safety. But we are, again, in one of the safest communities in the state of Georgia and the lowest crime rate in the metro Atlanta area. So thank you for having me today, and you tell me how you want to go forward and we'll move on.
Well, thank you, Sheriff, and you're right. I mean, it's certainly a huge part of our economic success, and of course, we focus a lot of time and energy on how many people are moving here, and that dominates a lot of conversation, both politically and in the news. But in reality, the business growth that we're seeing here is phenomenal, and that is driven in large part to the fact that it's a really safe community, and companies know that they can operate in safety, and their employees can operate in safety, and that is a it's an easy thing to take for granted, but thank you. It really is important to the economic future. So I want to jump right in some of our questions, particularly as it relates to leadership. And so, why don't we start? And I love this question because it's so open. But what are, in your view, the basic strategies of a successful leader?
So, I love that we're doing this, and for the participants, James and I spoke as we started this. This is not going to be the everything about the sheriff's office. I teach leadership, and I learn leadership, and I'm kind of a leadership junkie. So I love talking about leadership. And just because we're government doesn't mean things can't transfer over into the corporate world. I've worked in the corporate world some. I've worked for some major corporations like Smith and Wesson and Beretta USA, and I see the carryover. So here's, as we do that, I've kind of got a top 10. So if you want to talk about leadership and strategy, successful leaders, number one, be present. You got to be there. They got to see you. They got to know you're there. And sometimes that's tough. Sheriff's office is a large organization, and we're in 7 different buildings, and we do all these multi functions. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to be there, but you got to be present. That's number one. Number two is listen, really listen. I have this thing. I see everybody in the hall, and we all do that. Hey, James, how you doing today? I'm good, good, good. And we pass each other, and that's it. I'm not going to find anything out from that. The best conversations I have are at the gas pumps when we're putting gas in police cars, or when I go over to the jail and have lunch in the jail in our staff dining room. Not because I love the food there, okay, but simply because I can sit down with a young deputy at a table for 20 minutes and have lunch. And when I start off, I was like, "Hey, how's everything going?" "Yes, sir. Everything's good, sir. It's great, sir." And 15 minutes into the conversation, after talking about family, after talking about their aspirations, it's, "Can I tell you something?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Let me tell you what's messed up, what we're not doing right here." Those are honest conversations that you get to have. So listen, take those time and have real conversations. Show them you care about them. It sounds silly, but when I became sheriff, the one thing I realized, I had a lot of concerns about the sheriff's office and where we were headed and what we needed to do. And what I came to find out is that we were really good at what we did. They just needed somebody to love on them and care about them and thank them for what they're doing. But that goes to this other side. And this is the other, probably one of the bigger things. You have to hold people accountable, regardless of the position, regardless of who they are. You've got to hold people accountable, because I will tell you this, trust me when I say this, your good employees are watching why you are not dealing with that person who is stealing time, who is wasting effort, who is the cancer within the organization. They're looking at you and going, "You're a good leader. You're a good person. You're a good man. You're a good woman. Why aren't you doing something about this person?" So if you have a true bad actor in your organization, as hard as it is, you got to remove them. And then here's the one thing that leaders don't like, right? Avoid yes men and women. Uh, they all say nobody likes to bring the king bad news. The old off with their heads thing. Well, I will tell you this: you want bad news to be brought to you earlier than later, because earlier sometimes there's something you can do about it. So you have to really work on your culture of having people tell you the truth and not being yes men and yes women. The part that goes with that, I will tell you that I found out is as I'm in this new role in a large organization, is if I telegraph what my thoughts are or what we have a problem and I say, I think we should do this. Inevitably, people will say, yes, that's a great idea. We should do that. So now I've learned, and it's a learning thing for me, is don't telegraph. Hey, here's a problem. What do we do? Because you will find that your people are often way smarter than you are and come up with ideas. Maybe your idea would have worked, but their idea would have worked a whole lot better. Here's the one I struggle with: celebrate victories. When your people do a great job, make sure you recognize them. Um, have a culture. We do have a culture that we're trying to implement here, and we've been working for over 4 years on it. And we call it the courage to confront. Create a culture in your organization where your own employees will confront one another out of care, not out of anger, not out of anything else. If they see an employee not doing something right, mistreating another employee, mistreating a customer, doing those kind of things, create a culture where they'll go, hey, man, let me deal with this difficult customer for you. Let me take this one for a minute. Or pull you to the side and go, man, what's wrong? Maybe something's going on at home. Maybe something's else. But that's a culture that's just, you can't. And then finally, my last one, my top 10 is blame's yours. If you're the CEO, you're the boss, you take the blame because ultimately you're responsible for it. But then make sure you're doing everything you can to make sure that mistake doesn't happen again. We call it ringing the stupid bell here. That's my normer for it. So if we do something wrong and we're government, be honest about it. That amazes most people if government's honest. Apologize for it. Tell them what you're going to do to fix it, and then make sure you're not ringing the stupid bell for the same reason. Um, if you can do those things, your people will follow you through fire.
Excellent. Very good. That is fantastic. Those are all, you know, fantastic tenets that are applicable anywhere, really, in any organization. So tell me, what are some of your personal values that you apply in your own leadership approach when sometimes those expectations are not being met, and the accountability part of what you were talking about. Tell me about that.
So, I draw my initial leadership experiences like a lot of people did. I draw them from the sports field. Right? I played every sport known to man, I think, and it's an exaggeration, but I played a lot of sports coming up. Football was my main thing, and I was a team leader or a team captain, and you do those things. And then later on, I coached, and uh, you know, from leaders I worked for, good and bad, what I learned was you have to know your players. Every player is different. I had players when I coached that same thing at the sheriff's office here. I got a lot of strong type A's, um, and they're their own worst enemies when they make a mistake. In other words, they will beat themselves up because they hate making mistakes. All I have to do is bring it to their attention, and they will do their utmost to make sure they don't do it. But that's not everybody. I've got those super logical thinkers where you've got to sit down and have an autopsy over what went wrong and show them where the problem happened and then talk to them about what opportunities could have been taken that maybe would have solved that problem or eliminated that problem. And they learn that way. So I think it's really important to know your players and know, it's kind of like being on the football field. Coaches yell at some players, they put their arm around some players' shoulders, and they challenge some to rise to the occasion. And so I found that here, if you not one approach is going to fit. And that's where I think it's very important to us as leaders in our organizations, no matter what it is, to know who the players are and to know what it takes to motivate them. And I think if you do that and you set those expectations, then you'll see them rise. Because if you use the wrong approach to the wrong person, um, either your message is not going to get there or they're just not going to respond to it.
Very good. Excellent. Great. So how do you lead in a way that translates into developing an individual or a team or encouraging personal growth? I know we were talking about that a little bit earlier,
Yeah.
but how do you lead in that way?
Well, again, I told as James and I were talking offline before, is I'm a leadership junkie about reading on leadership things and teaching and doing those things. But as we talked about being present in those things in those top 10, one of the things too is you better set the example. If you want hardworking people and you're playing golf 3 days a week and you're expecting them to bust their butts, set the example, right? You're not perfect. Remember, be careful of putting yourself too high on a pedestal because, they all action. The higher you go, the farther it is to fall. Remember that you're human. You're going to make mistakes too, and acknowledge when you make mistakes. When you screw up, tell people you screwed up. Apologize for it and say, "Hey, man, I understand we're human. We make mistakes." So, first of all, do those things. And the second thing is, get rid of the yes men. I have literally sat in meetings where, when I say get rid of them, work with people to stop being that, to have the courage to be truthful, right? And to be confrontational in a professional way. I've sat in meetings before and looked around and thought I saw a bunch of heads doing like this. So I intentionally basically said something stupid, which sometimes happens unintentionally. Um, but I made a suggestion that really was not a good suggestion. One person at the table, and it was the lowest ranking person or the lowest statured person in the organization that was at that table, basically said that's a stupid decision, but in a nicely professional way. Trying to figure out, hey, tells the boss that's not a really smart thing to do. I did that intentionally. That led to another conversation after that meeting with the senior staff that were there, the two or three of them, and going, why in the world would somebody not have said this? Part of what it is when you're trying to encourage a team to grow is uh, teaching them and asking them not to let you fall, right? It's not just about me and about you, but it not because if I fall, the organization starts to fall. So step up and do those kind of things. The other thing, real fast, I'll tell you is I do. Sometimes I have people come with an idea, and maybe I don't buy into it 100%, but it's not a bad idea, and I don't know if it's going to work, but they're encouraged by it. They're enthused. They're showing enthusiasm, and if it's not going to hurt us, I'm not scared of taking a chance. I'll let them try it. And I'll monitor it and I'll have somebody looking over it to make sure it doesn't get off the tracks and do those kind of things. But you'll be amazed when you give somebody the autonomy to use their enthusiasm to try something new. Uh, it may not work, but I promise you, you can turn that enthusiasm to something that will work with that person. So if they know that you trust them to do those things, then I think you'll see more reward out of that. You'll see harder work from your people, and you'll see more productivity from your people.
Excellent. Very good. Well, and that sort of kind of leads into another, you do have a unique background in that you have uh, worked in both private for-profit business and certainly in public law enforcement. So based on kind of the experience that you've had in both of those, what are some of the suggestions or guidelines that you might bring for a new entrepreneur or somebody who's starting their business and getting things up and running? What are some lessons that you've learned in terms of leadership from that might be applicable to those folks?
Yeah. So from leadership, and I'm not the one to sit here and do this, although we handle a $50+ million budget, and we handle a lot of things. Look, we're government is different than private business. Um, I'm a monopoly. There's no other service provider available for public safety in Forsyth County. Um, I'm guaranteed funding, right, to some level from government. We don't sell widgets. We don't make a product. You can't go anywhere else for our service. We're kind of like Comcast. Um, I was on the phone with our customer service, so we could talk about that later. Um, but from that standpoint, understand this too, is we also don't, I'm spending somebody else's money and I'm responsible for it. My shareholders represent about 250,000 Forsyth County citizens. And so we are different, but we also bear on this. If you're a new entrepreneur, look, there's the safety side of things we can talk about, but the business planning side, the chamber and others can help you with, and score and other things like that. If you're thinking about opening up something new, oh my gosh, please do your deep dive into those things. Make sure you've got the technical side, but then everything from the marketing. If I never thought much about marketing until I became sheriff, and I realized that everything we do is based on trust with our community. So the more we communicate, the better we're open and transparent with people, the better that level of trust is. So the same thing applies for your business. How do you communicate with your customer? How do you get them to trust you? How do you own up when you screw up? How do you do that in a positive way? Doing those kind of things. So you better have a plan for those things. Everything from the bad review to the everything else that comes with that. And then, on the safety side, we've got a lot of stuff. Our business watch program can come in and teach your employees everything, how to look for fraud and scams, active shooter safety things. We offer all that at no cost to you. The electronic financial scams that are out there, and there's a lot of them out there. We're happy to come do those things. But as a new entrepreneur, just realize you God bless you, because you're 80 hours a week if you're a true entrepreneur and you're starting something up. But stay the course, and just remember, there's some old leadership books, and one of the things that it talks about is best thing you can do is get the right people on the bus. And I think it was good to great. And then the other part that I found more important is a lot of times you get the right people on the bus, but it's more important to get them in the right seat on the bus. I've had people within our organization who are phenomenal performers, and we put them in the wrong place, and they were horrible. Not horrible people, horrible producers. Get them in the right seat on the bus, and best thing you can do is just get out of their way, because they'll perform very well. So those are just a couple of keys to maybe think about.
Very good. So, in your career, so where have you learned the most about leadership?
I think everybody learns from good and bad leaders, right? And I would say early in my career, I probably learned more from bad leaders. I had two or three, just blunt, I don't know how to put it. They were bad leaders. They were, wow. And they covered the gamut from uh, maybe not the best morality and ethics to just how they manage. They try to manage by fear and intimidation. We're in a paramilitary organization, and I was even joking earlier with doing a salute. A lot of times, you especially in emergencies, we do what we're told, right? So there's not time to explain things, but that's even in the corporate world. We're in the midst of the building's on fire, and we ain't got time to discuss why I need you to do something. But I think I learned from that, and like most aspiring leaders, I said, if I ever get the chance, by gosh, that won't be me. I won't do that. But then as I grew and I got older, and I started getting into leadership roles, what I realized is going back to that sports, being the team captain, being the leader, rallying your team around you, rallying your team around a cause, rallying we're down by 7 points and there's 2 minutes left in the football game. I need your best. And there's moments like that in business. So I had a great mentor next door to us, Gary George, who's a retired police chief from Alpharetta, uh, almost 50 years in the business. He was one of my mentors. I learned early to get mentors. I got to spend 3 months at the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia, many, many years ago, surrounded by 200 plus of the nation's foremost law enforcement leaders. And I really learned a lot from those experts in my field, and by listening to their successes and their failures. And that's really where I think, kind of guided me to my own path of leadership.
Excellent. Very good. Well, that is fascinating. Thank you for sharing some of that with us. We're gonna keep going through some of the pre-submitted questions, Sheriff, and so some of these the next questions relate more to safety and public safety. And so the first question that came up in that category that was pre-submitted, how are we combating this drug triangle? And maybe it would be helpful to start with what the drug triangle really is, for those of us who may not be as familiar with that.
So, quite a few years ago, one of the local media outlets named the triangle, which really dealt at that time more with heroin and overdoses and the dangers, and it spread into North Metro. And we were right on the tip of it, and we are not immune from that in any way, shape, or form. Uh, we had cut down our overdoses. We created the Johns Creek and Forsyth Drug Task Force. They had done a phenomenal job of targeting drug dealers. We had seen a reduction in heroin, and then fentanyl came out. And then we saw a reduction in that. But unfortunately, in this year of pandemic, everything that I was worried about is starting to come true. We are seeing more attempted suicides. We are seeing more mental health cases. We are seeing an uptick in overdoses, including a couple of fatalities right here in Forsyth County. And there's nothing sadder than that. And they're from adult to youth. We've had from 70-year-olds during my time to teens. And so we're seeing a true uptick in all three of those things. And so we're working really hard to do that. I'm gonna actually share my screen for a little second here
Please.
if I can. I think you've got that. I believe you've got
There
it.
it
Can
is.
everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. You'll notice kind of your bottom left, the Drug Task Force of 2020 results. Um, we target drug dealers and human trafficking out of our task force. Um, and we make no bones about it. Sometimes users get caught up in this. We know that drug addiction is without doubt a disease and it needs treatment. And we try to do everything we can to help with that. But we're targeting drug dealers. If you just take a look at what they did last year in the middle of a pandemic, 595 arrest warrants, 326 operations. That usually means surveillances and search warrants and those things. 184 arrests made, 137 pounds of drugs seized, 736 pills seized, some guns, some vehicles, and some currency. It's not about guns and vehicles and currency. Those are taking those from drug dealers, but a significant number of those things help to take these dealers who are targeting our most at risk out of our community. And so we have to continue with that. You know, we started a mental health crisis response unit, which specially trained deputy sheriffs and mental health professionals. And we're seeing, unfortunately, right now, the border, I'm being blunt, it's not a political statement. The border is porous. Drugs are coming in like crazy. They have been for a little while, and not just in the last 3 months. They've been coming through for quite a while, and drug prices are low. And those people with addiction issues and substance abuse issues are finding it a little bit easier to get those. We recently, one of our arrests here led to some information that led to DeKalb County and Atlanta, where we took down two of the largest heroin dealers in metro Atlanta. Our federal task force officers followed up on stuff that happened right here in Forsyth County. We were able to take down two major, and I'm talking about major cartel level heroin dealers. So those are the things that we continue to try to work on. Those are the things that we're going to continue working towards to try to keep this community safe. And, you know, at the same time, combating that with our residential substance abuse treatment 180-day program in the jail. You know, everybody's hope is somebody that has a substance abuse problem can get help and beat that, right? Come out better. So if they do end up in jail, we're even trying inside the jail to do something to help them come out better than they came in and maybe avoid coming back in contact with the criminal justice system.
Well, that actually is a good lead in, and I think some of that answers this next question. But there's two pieces to this. One is what level, if any, is major crime increasing or decreasing? And then this month of March 2021, there was an article in Forsyth County News of a large drug bust. Is this typical or isolated?
So we deal with all the way to cartel level drug investigations here. And when I say cartel level, I'm legitimately meaning drug cartels. Uh, they're, they're, they target um, suburban communities with stash houses, cash stash houses, those kind of things, because they think eyes aren't on them. Gwinnett County got hit really hard for several years. We've seen it in Cherokee, we've seen it in Hall, we've seen it in Forsyth. Um, so we're seeing those. But here's the great news overall. There's nothing great about cartels and drugs, but what we are seeing is a decrease in crime. 2017 saw a moderate increase in a few categories and decreases in some. 2018, our crime numbers decreased. 2019, our crime numbers decreased over 18. And 2020, last year, our crime numbers decreased again. I'm going to share one more time with you here on something
Please.
else.
Yeah.
Um, there you go. If you'll look, we normally include Dawson and Lumpkin, although they're much smaller counties, but their numbers weren't available when we got these. Um, Cherokee and us, I usually jokingly call kissing cousins. We are very similar to each other, very similar makeup in a lot of ways, from affluence to good school systems to fill in the blank, right? But if you'll notice, our crime numbers are significantly low. No murders, 12 rapes reported. And sometimes those are stranger on stranger. That's rare in Forsyth County. Violent crime is very rare for us. Most of that time is known offenders. 13 robberies reported, 158 burglaries, 85 motor vehicle thefts, and 868 thefts. Uh, Cherokee beat us in three categories. We beat them in three categories. So we are still the safest when it comes to violent crime and other crime community in all of Metro Atlanta. And we're unique. When when counties report or sheriff's offices and police departments report crime, they report for their own jurisdiction. Well, in Forsyth County, the city of Cumming represents about, I don't know, about 6,000 full-time residents, something like that. And while they have a very good police department, they have a very small footprint. So we represent the other 244,000 people in Forsyth County. Go to neighboring Cherokee County where you have Woodstock and Canton and Holly Springs and fill in the blank. I'm sure I missed a few, Ball Ground and others. They report their own numbers. So we're reporting for a much larger population overall. But if you look just a little bit here, our theft numbers are considerably down from last year. Our burglary numbers are down from last year. Our robberies did pick up, but we were able to solve the majority of those. And our sexual assault or rape, as it's called rape, but it's all sexual assaults, were identical to 2019. So our crime numbers in the spate of growth and encroachment from what I call Atlanta, and I'm just talking the metro region, always seems to get closer as growth continues all through that northern corridor. We've been able to, and that's not just because my deputies are great and they are great and they do a really good job, and I'm proud of them. But it's because of the relationship with our citizens. It's because of all the number ones that we have here in Forsyth County. And it truly shows when a community actually gets together with law enforcement and has a trust factor and calls and talks and reports things. This is what happens. You have a really safe community.
Very good. Perfect. Excellent. So another question, this is sort of jumping at least the kind of crimes we've been talking about. Does the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office have a unit to investigate sex trafficking? And what is the current state of adolescent migrant or non-migrant sex trafficking in the county?
Migrant, not. Wow, that's pretty specific. Um,
Yeah.
it's nothing to laugh at with human trafficking. We sit on a human trafficking task force. We work closely with the First Lady of Georgia on her really push on this, and kudos to them. I chair the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council for the state of Georgia, which is a large state organization, and um, we put a lot of effort in human trafficking. So we do. In 2019, I started a high-tech crimes unit. Our high-tech crimes unit does sexual exploitation, along with our drug task force who targets human trafficking. They do child pornography, child predators, our sex offenders. They also do all electronic-based crimes. So that five-person unit is specifically dedicated to exactly that. And I can show you real fast just a little bit. Um, you look to your right where it says high-tech crimes, just an idea of what they did. Cyber tips or things that we get that are reports of maybe child predators online doing things like that. BitTorrent investigations is similar, but this is how many forensic exams we did on electronic devices. We did 16 tablets, 173 phones, external things analyzed, which are just maybe a flash drive or something like that. 88 hard disk drives analyzed, previewed 118 different things, did 41 search warrants, executed 244 criminal arrest warrants. So we are one of the agencies that is very, very active in being proactive in our approach to this. We have not, thank God, seen many victims of human trafficking here in Forsyth County, but all our deputies are trained on it. We know the questions to ask. So we try to, a lot of times human trafficking victims can be seen as criminal offenders, maybe as prostitution or something like that. And so we've been really careful working with our state and federal partners to learn the things that we need to look for to make sure that we don't re-victimize somebody who might actually be a victim. So we're asking those things as well. We're asking those questions when we run across, and they're simple questions. Where do you live? Do you have your own credit cards? Do you have your own car keys? Where's your driver's license? Do you, if they're foreign national, do you have a passport? Where is it? Is somebody else holding it? Do you live by yourself? All those things to try to determine that no one is forcing them, or lack of better words, pimping them into a life that's unfair and illegal. And so we're working with all those things to try to make sure. And we can't turn our eye, because we know that Metro Atlanta, and particularly the northern suburbs, are a haven for what we've seen in human trafficking and sex trafficking. And we can never turn our eyes away from that, because as soon as you do, you're going to miss a victim that you could have saved.
Particularly as Atlanta continues to be a global hotspot for
Absolutely.
sex trafficking. So someone just asked a question a moment ago in the Q&A that I think we probably ought to clarify. The data that you are sharing is from the just brand new annual report. Is that
That,
correct?
that is correct. So our annual report this week went to print. And so I'm sharing from the draft of our annual report. So the numbers you were seeing that I was talking about were 2020 numbers. And then that one bar graph that I showed you, that was 2019 versus 2020 in Forsyth County numbers.
Great.
So,
All right, very good. All right, so I think you've already addressed this next question, but maybe just for some clarity. So where does Forsyth County? I mean, certainly in Metro Atlanta, we do pretty well, but around the state, I would assume that also means that we perform really well in terms of safety among the state. Is that accurate?
so we do, and there's not really a measurement stick for across the state, because it's really tough to compare ourselves to a friend of mine is the sheriff of Glasscock County, very small rural community in middle Georgia, 4,000 residents, 4,000 in the entire county. Um, Really hard to compare apples and apples. 250,000, the eighth largest county in the state of Georgia, versus a 4,000 person community. Now you can do a crime index per capita and stuff. In all honesty, I haven't looked at that. I try to look at Metro Atlanta, because that is where our criminals are coming from per se, right? So we're the same drug dealers that they're chasing in Johns Creek. We're chasing in Forsyth. They're chasing in Swanee. And so we look at around us and what those crime numbers are to see, are other agencies going up and we're going down, or vice versa. And that's kind of our report card that we look at, and try to adjust, and make those ideas and those future decisions based on how do we keep this community safe and a great place to live.
Very good. Well, this next question's a very straightforward, simple question. How do you manage to keep an immensely growing county so that's growing so fast, so safe?
I pray a lot. Um, People ask me, I guess the question along that line, people ask, what keeps you awake at night? Um, and bad things like we just saw over in Cherokee County are what keep me awake at night. And I'm not implying anything about Cherokee County, but somebody coming hurting our citizens. Violent crime scares me to death, because people depend on us to keep them safe, and it is, but it's a two-way street. Um, and then also something happening to one of my employees, one of my deputies. We know that law enforcement is a very dangerous occupation, and it has gotten much more dangerous over the past 5 years. Um, and it continues. I don't see it getting any better right now. Those are the things. But the real answer is it's what I said before. If it was just we were a really good, competent law enforcement agency, yes, we can do a lot of stuff. If you don't factor in everything that's great about Forsyth County, our education system, the number of educated populace, the fluency, um, the all the number ones that make us great, and all the heavy lifting we've been doing beforehand. to try to create relationships in the community and in our changing demographic community. We work really hard to try to make sure that every community has a voice, and that we're listening to what they're concerned about. And when you do that, I think it really creates an opportunity. And I'll give you a quick example. We have a volunteer unit at the sheriff's office. 4 years ago, it had about 7 or 8 volunteers in it. Today, it has over 100 volunteers in it. They donate over nearly 5,000 hours of service to the sheriff's office and to the citizens of Forsyth County every year at zero pay. They're volunteers. There's a COVID-19 vaccine clinic going on right now. There's probably a dozen of our volunteers that are working the desk right now. We couldn't do it without our volunteers, but that's a testament to the level of cooperation our citizens have with us. And I hope that we have and return that back. And I think you add those two things together, you get a safe community.
Great answer. All right. So, kind of moving away from some of that more sort of policy or sheriff's office facing questions. So, what's the biggest challenge facing the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office in 2021?
Uh, well, there's internal and external. There's always your challenges internally and externally. Internally, it's going to be finding people who want to work in this profession and finding qualified, moral, uh, educated folks who want to get in the profession. We've seen this profession vilified in 2020, and sometimes deservedly so. Individuals were vilified, and sometimes that was deservedly so, but certainly not this profession. It is a proud and honorable profession, and it takes some special people to do what they do, who are willing to put their lives on the line for people they've never met. Um, and they do it exceptionally well 99.99% of the time. But we have to also be willing to call out our own when they don't. And even inside this agency, I've had to do that. Externally, it's growth. In Forsyth County, it's different in other agencies. It's growth. Other agencies, how do we get materials and equipment and do those things? We're very blessed in Forsyth County that our board of commissioners are very supportive of public safety in general. We're a well-funded, well-equipped agency. We're well-staffed. I don't need additional positions than what I have. We added a few this year, but we're well-staffed for the size we are. I don't need another 100 deputies. If they offered them to me tomorrow, said, "Hey, do you need another 50 deputies?" My answer would be no. We're well-staffed. We added eight additional patrol deputies this year, and we probably won't add any more patrol deputies for 2 or 3 more years. But I think that's the challenge, is going to be finding people that want to work in this profession. And if you look at a job fair in Atlanta, a law enforcement job fair, every city police department showing up needing people. We're blessed right now to be at about 98% staffing. And I think somebody asked, how big are we? At full staffing at the end of the year, once these 8 deputies are added in the third and fourth quarter, we'll be at 492 employees. That's total employees. Remember, we work the jail with 120 plus employees. Our court systems employ 4 different buildings with about 50 employees. Our school resource officers, there are 43 of those, and we're bringing new schools online. Our uniform patrol division, and it goes on and on, our training division, our detective division, all those kind of things. About 90 civilians, 85 to 90 civilians work at the sheriff's office. We're the third largest full service sheriff's office in Georgia. But full service means that we do law enforcement duties. Like when you dial 911, we're the ones that show up, versus say Gwinnett County, where Gwinnett County police show up and Gwinnett County sheriffs do the constitutional duties of the courts, the jail, and other things like that. So even though we're the 8th largest county, we're the 3rd largest full service, because obviously some of the largest counties in the state are in those metro areas where they have sheriffs and county police as kind of duplicative services.
Very good. All right. So a couple of questions that have been recently submitted in the Q&A. One of the questions, and actually, this it's interesting. One of these questions came up because there was a discussion on our neighborhood blog about something about this very thing, and the question is, the person submitting, I'm a grandma and always worry about my when my daughter dates someone new, feel guilty thinking the worst. But how can I be sure that my young granddaughter or grandson is safe in that scenario?
My God, that's a tough question. Um, my daughter's engaged, and it still scares me to death. Um, and I like the young man. Um, first off, is if you're a grandma and you're asking that question, you're probably a really good grandmother, and you've probably taught some good life lessons and good decision making, and being a father of a daughter as well. I want a strong, independent woman who she happens to be getting married because she loves this guy, but not because she needs the guy. Um, and from those things, I think you just have to teach them to make good decisions. And I know that's a really simple answer, but you have to look at um, how they've been raised and who they're hanging out with and those things. Different faces, different places make all the difference in the world. So I think you have to instill in them early on the confidence in these young women. And I'm seeing this as the father of a daughter, not as the sheriff, but instill confidence in them that they don't need anyone else's approval, that they're enough on their own, that they have the right to guide their own destiny. It's okay to say no. It's okay to do whatever that is, and make sure that they understand that and they're empowered to do that. And I think if you do those things, you run a lot better chance of your daughter or your granddaughter making good decisions and doing those things. How do you stop somebody that you don't know that's an unknown criminal? I wish I knew that answer, but I think if we instill in our daughters that they're strong, independent women and their value in themselves and who they are, then I think you'll find that she does really well.
Excellent answer. Very good. Um, this is more, and actually, I've sort of wondered this myself. Another question is probably more kind of a technical question about some of the data. So, do you include in your numbers, your crime numbers, going down suspicious deaths that are under investigation? Again, I assume that means from past years, and just no murders in such a huge county is amazing. And then a separate question related to that is about how many suicides are there and accidental deaths in the county. I know you touched on some of that, but in terms of what is counted as a homicide under investigation, how do you treat that?
So the numbers that you're seeing for that I threw up on the screen, I'll ask you to understand that those are Federal Bureau of Investigations and Department of Justice requires us to report certain numbers. It used to be called a Uniform Crime Reporting. Now it's called NIBRS, or National Incident-Based Reporting System. They're a little bit different from each other, but they're specifically to criminal acts. They don't track suicides. They don't track accidental deaths like traffic fatalities. Although NHTSA and others do that, we keep up with traffic fatalities and things like that. We certainly do those, but we don't report, even if we were investigating a suspicious death, up and until there is a legal determination made that it becomes a criminal act. Let's say that for 3 months we were waiting on something to come back from the crime lab, or a new tip came in that led us to believe that a death is now a homicide or a murder, and we're now criminally investigating that. We would then go back and change that number, right? We would re-report that number. But just because it's a suspicious death that's under investigation, up and until it is determined to be a criminal act, it does not get reported in that number of homicides or murders. I mean, that's real technical, but that's how it works. Forsyth County is really blessed. It is really rare to see, and knock on wood when I say this, it is really rare to see stranger on stranger violent crime in Forsyth County. Um, and I just pray we can hold that course. But we've been very blessed with that because we have a great citizenry, and I think from the deputies being proactive, that we're not seeing any more of that.
Very good. Thank you. Well, we're down to the last few minutes. I just have a couple of questions. One of these was not pre-submitted. It's my own question. Tell me about the blue cow behind you on the table. I can. You've got an excellent camera, and I can see that. And I'm assuming it's a cow, but I am curious.
So many of your participants will probably know that Dr. Lanier Orr, Dr. Orr, 3 years ago, we had a young calf that escaped from a farm on Pilgrim Mill Road and made this trek, incredible trek across Forsyth County, like 30 miles back and forth. We had all these spottings of it, and it became an internet sensation. And the Forsyth County community nicknamed this cow Moodini. because we tried every way we could. We tried to tranquilize, we tried to capture. We had people on horseback trying to capture this thing, and you couldn't. Finally, Dr. Orr, we got this poor calf tired out, and Dr. Orr came and tranquilized it for us and got us back to his farm. So a week later, he shows up in my office with this custom hand painted cow that says Mudini and FCSO and presented it to us for our efforts to capture this cow. So it is one
Perfect.
of my prized possessions, and it
That's
sits
awesome.
there in my conference table.
That is awesome. Well, thank you. Well, and in fact, so I grew up on a cattle farm in Franklin, North Carolina, Western North Carolina, and so my father had been watching that progress, and so at multiple points he would call and needle me a little bit about how if I learned anything, I should be able to help catch that cow, and I said, no, it's not like up there where you've got a bunch of cow pastures you could just run one into. It's not like that here anymore.
No, it's not anymore, but that was a great thing. And you know, look, thank you to everybody being online. I hope maybe you took something from this. When it comes to leadership and it comes to those kind of things, and nobody's perfect. And don't beat yourself up when you make a mistake. Pull yourself off the floor. Um, Figure out where the mistake happened. There's a lot of things we've done since I've been sheriff that I wish we had done better. That we had, and the challenge then is to get better, right? To do those autopsies, lack of a better word, to do those. We do a lot of things here called critical incident reviews. Anytime we have a car chase, anytime we have a use of force that's significant, anytime we have a major incident, we'll sit back down afterwards with the people involved and have a critical incident review. You can call it whatever you want to call it. And we figure out what we did well, and it's non-confrontational. It's not a catch a moment or a gotcha moment. And what can we do better next time? If you don't do those things, you're never going to get better. So maybe consider taking, when you have a failure in business or you have something that blew up on you, break it down a little bit, bring the people involved, do it non-confrontationally, and see where you can get better. You might be surprised at how they respond.
Excellent. Very good. And really, as we close out, just want to thank you again, Sheriff. I I also, and most folks would have no reason to know this. Our sheriff is also a big part of how we are able, in his support and cooperation with a lot of the film products or projects that are going on in Forsyth County, and that is rare. And so, things like Ozark and other shows that have filmed here in the past. We certainly are in the pipeline for a lot more. It has a big impact on our economy to have that, and thank you for that cooperation and support of that. And also, I should say, if this sheriff thing doesn't work out, having watched Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix, you got a great film career ahead of you yourself. So it was great to see that, and thank you for doing that. It was great to see you on there.
Anything we can do to help solve a case, and that's an unsolved case that
Yeah.
is near and dear to my heart. And at the end of the deal, end of the day, end of the deal with these things, all we are is fact finders. We want the truth to come out. We want to know the information, and we're a cog in the criminal justice system, not the only one.
Well, thank you for all of your great work and your leadership, and appreciate it very much. I know we're coming down to the end of time. Anything that you'd like to close us out with?
No, just hey, look, my sincere thank you to everybody that's on the line. My sincere thank you to Forsyth County because, again, when I say this, it sounds like I hate to sound like a politician. I may be an elected official, but I've been a cop my whole life. Um, it's simply this: we can't do it alone. We can't do it without you. This would not be nearly as safe a place if it wasn't for the people of Forsyth County and their engagement with us, the trust factor that's there, and I hope we're always building on that. So, people ask, what can you do for us? Hey, well, our nonprofit, the biggest thing you can do is just have your eyes and ear open and be a part of the community and be willing to, if something doesn't look right, report it and trust us enough that we're not going to overreact on something that may turn out to be nothing. But we will react appropriately if it turns out to be something. That's how we keep a safe community. And trust us when I say that we're good enough that we're going to behave professionally and do those things right. Um, And, don't be, there's so many times I hear people that are, I saw it, I thought about calling 911, but I just wasn't sure. Please call, let us know. You may be saving somebody, you may be saving somebody's property, doing those kind of things. And if it turns out to be nothing, we're never going to go, hey, Sally Sue or Jimmy Bob from next door called and said they thought you were suspicious. It's going to be simply a pleasant encounter with a good citizen, if that's what it is. And we'll thank them for letting us talk to them for a minute, and we'll be on our way.
Sheriff, thank you. And especially after this past year, we're all very grateful to you, and on behalf of a very grateful community, thank you. It
Oh,
makes
thank you.
there's no one will ever know the incredible work, the true level of incredible work you've done, and we appreciate it more than we can say. Thank you all for joining us on the call today. Next month, keep an eye out. I don't think we've set the date yet. But we will be hosting our community leadership discussion focused on education. We will be hosting our school superintendent and the chair of our school board on that call, and would love to have everybody back to join us because that's going to be a really, really important conversation. So, Sheriff, thank you. And everybody that joined us today, thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.